I'm 30 right now. It's 2024. It's October 12th as we're recording this, and America feels like a country that used to be respected. And I think it's because of companies like IGN. Because IGN used to be a respected gaming company, and now they're just IGN. And you can't spell ignorant without IGN. And this is going to be my reaction to Dragon Ball Z's long battle to become a hit in the US of A. A 7 out of 10 Dragon Ball Z, the new DBZ game that came out that everybody every man from my age, who's from the 90s, our little fucking 90 baby boners are just fucking popping off all over the place, just left and right, little just blue Viagra pills, just boom, 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 in the shape of sparkling zero, because this new Dragon Ball Z game is amazing. But IGN gives it the same exact score as Concord. How the fuck?
Was year for Dragon Ball fans. The passing of creator Akira Toriyama was sudden and tragic, and upon hearing the news, fans worldwide were quick to pay their respects.
Respect to Toriyama-san.
Show their gratitude, and otherwise send so many positive thoughts
Oh
of
my
legendary
Vegeta.
manga artists into the ether that it could have powered multiple spirit bombs. The upcoming series Dragon Ball Daima was one of Toriyama's final projects, and thankfully its
don't want
premiere
him to
will
say
be
good sentences like
simultaneously
that.
broadcast in multiple territories around the globe. In the age of streaming media, it's easy to take that for granted, but it wasn't always the case. Much like Goku's journey to the West, Dragon Ball's increase in popularity outside of Japan has been long, complicated, and a bit nonsensical, especially in the United States. So join me on this mystical adventure down memory
Wait.
lane, and let's
What is this? Why does Vegeta got a gun, bro?
So join me on this mystical adventure down memory lane, and let's reflect on how Dragon Ball Z's uphill battle to find an English-speaking audience beat the odds and resulted in one of the strongest pop culture properties under the heavens.
This time, let the whole world hear! Yeah!
Have you ever read a book by opening to the very middle of it and just started reading there, assuming you'd figure out what was going on along the way? Because that's basically what it was like if your first exposure to Dragon Ball was the beginning of Dragon Ball Z. But for many Dragon Ball fans, that's exactly how they got started. It's worth pointing out that in the original manga, there is
That's
no
fair.
Z. From Goku's first encounter with Bulma all
That's
the
fair.
way through the defeat of Majin Buu, it's just called Dragon Ball. The events of DBZ started Volume 17, or Chapter 195 out of 395. When the anime adaptation reached Goku's adult years after he'd become a dad, it got a slight rebrand when the Z was slapped on.
He's my son. Your son? Pretty wild, huh?
Toriyama's reasoning? Z is the last letter of the alphabet, and he was ready for the series to end, so that was his way of saying, I am done. Of course, the Z half of the series wound up running way longer than Goku's earlier adventures, so that
Yeah.
didn't exactly pan out.
And it feels like it's a halfway stone for the rest of Dragon Ball.
Goku's really hard to kill off for good. Parents want their kids to watch, and what kids actually want to watch is different from place to place, so depending where Dragon Ball was released, it underwent varying amounts of creative localization and censorship, and saw
Whoa.
varying degrees of success. Though Dragon Ball wouldn't fully catch
don't
on
remember
until a
that act.
decade later, Goku's Flying Nimbus actually first cruised onto American airwaves just a few years after he debuted in Japan.
Wow, it's great! Thanks, I love it!
In 1989, a company called Harmony Gold USA got the rights to
Interesting.
distribute Dragon Ball stateside. Anime fans may be familiar with this company for its creative localization of the Macross series, creative in that they kitbashed 3 disparate anime series together and rebranded them Robotech. Robotech attracted its own American fan base, but it's generally loathed by anime purists for how it butchered Macross and how difficult licensing deals made it to get the original stateside. Well, Harmony Gold's so-called lost dub of Dragon Ball could very well have put Toriyama's martial arts epic in the exact same situation. Harmony Gold recut and redubbed at least the first 5 episodes of Dragon Ball, and also spliced together the first and third theatrical films into one TV
Yo, why do they gotta do Bulma like that, man?
movie. These were aired on a handful of smaller TV stations around the US, but failed to catch on. As you'd expect, the show was edited for content, but as you probably didn't expect,
Just that angle.
practically the entire cast was renamed for no apparent reason. Goku became Zero, Bulma was
The
now
fuck?
Lina, Oolong, Yamcha, and Puar were now Mao Mao, Zadaki, and Squeaker. Krillin was renamed Bongo, which is especially baffling when you consider that one of the villains of the first movie was already named Bongo, but he became Mayor Domo. The best one, though?
What the
Korin
fuck?
was now Whiskers the Wonder Cat.
That's a pretty weird and disgusting idea, big guy.
Less sense than those new names was the movie itself, which Frankenstein together Curse of the Blood Rubies and Mystical Adventure, which are both already heavily truncated, very loose retellings of entire story arcs of the anime.
What in the fuck is
Harmony Gold
this?
USA only dubbed a few episodes, but scripts for 60 were localized and used as the basis for the Spanish language version that would be aired in Mexico in 1991 as
They got a
Zero
completely
El
different Dragon Ball.
Magico, stupid names and all. It was a failure, but Bandai decided that maybe that had something to do with the localization. Sure enough, after a more faithful Spanish dub was released in 1996, it was a hit.
Conteste Son Goku Surasai.
Dragon Ball Z remains immensely popular in Mexico, as indicated by stuff like that viral taqueria named after Goku, or the 2018 international incident that occurred when various local governments helped organize public screenings of the final episodes of Dragon Ball Super, and the
Nice.
Japanese ambassador sent them cease and desist letters, which were completely ignored. Anyway, stateside,
Nice.
much like Shenron lay dormant waiting for someone to collect the Dragon Balls and say the magic words, Dragon Ball remained an untapped licensing goldmine for half a decade after Harmony Gold's
Respect, my Hispanic brothers. Respecto mi hermanos. Yeah, Sparkling Zero, baby. Yo, we might have to play this hit on stream. This game is so much fun. This is my childhood. My dad and I would go at each other. My dad and I would go to war playing that game. That and Halo 2 are like, and Greg Hastings Paintball Tournament maxed. That's my childhood.
In September 1995, an Alabama newspaper called the Montgomery Advertiser.
Yeah, I
published
might
a
have to-
full-page
I might have
story
just to
all
pull
about
the trigger on Dragon
in
Ball
an interview
Z.
with Bob Brennan, the Montgomery-based director of licensing for Funimation Productions, who was desperately trying to make it a hit. In his words, "My frustration is taking Dragon Ball to Americans and telling them I have Mickey Mouse in my hands, and they don't understand."
Goku and his friends are truly an international marketing phenomenon.
Yeah, because you're selling yourself short by saying you have Mickey Mouse on your hand. You have Dragon Ball Z. Goku would solo the whole Mickey Mouse universe. Do you understand that? Krillin would solo the whole Mickey... Bulma would solo that shit, okay? Don't disrespect the DBZ cast like that.
And are currently the #1 animated show in Japan, France, Spain, and Hong Kong.
Brennan does his best to contextualize Dragon Ball's potential, pointing out that it has a whopping 500 episodes compared to American cartoon favorites like Roadrunner, who only had a meager 40 cartoon shorts. Brennan also notes that in Japan, Dragon Ball airs 5 days a week during prime time, a luxury that wasn't exactly extended stateside. As the article also notes, any American viewer
They got it
wanting to
5
check
days
out
in a
this
row?
Japanese equivalent
I
of
grew
Mickey
up with
Mouse,
weekly
you need to tune in at
releases.
5:30
What the
a.m.
fuck?
on Saturdays.
Yeah.
A very vague recollection of seeing an episode or two of Dragon Ball around this time, and I think that only happened because my friend set his VCR to record it during its crack of dawn time slot. I recall thinking it was kind of cool, but not really understanding when or where it was from. Sadly, based on Dragon Ball's ratings, most kids weren't eagerly jumping out of bed on Saturdays or setting their VCRs to catch Japan's hottest cartoon show from a decade prior.
I think I'll pass.
Funimation's takeaway was that maybe Dragon Ball wasn't a good fit for American audiences. But what about Dragon Ball Z? Sure, f it, go big or go home. Viewers would be missing 153 episodes of context and setup from the original series, or maybe only 140 if they'd actually woken up to watch that failed 13-episode run. But there was a company that knew a thing or two about getting American kids on board with Japanese shows devoid of context.
Funimation? Oh, Saban.
Saban Entertainment was a powerhouse in 90s children's programming. One of its biggest hits had come from intercutting and dubbing footage of the Japanese show Kyoryu Sentai Zeo Ranger with original footage starring American actors to create Mighty Morphin Power Rangers.
Yeah, if you guys don't know, this is where the Power Rangers comes from.
And hey, if the 16th season
Super
of the
Senpai.
Tokusatsu series that had been airing in Japan since the 1970s could be successfully reverse engineered for American audiences, DBZ would be a breeze, right?
Yeah.
Funimation's initial hope was that the amount of action in Z compared to vanilla Dragon Ball would make it an easier sell to bloodthirsty American children. But that was somewhat at odds with Saban's strict guidelines for what should be censored for network TV. For instance, death couldn't be referenced, which is kind of tricky when Goku literally dies 5 episodes into DBZ. There was also a rule against showing children in distress, which meant some edits had to be made to the whole plotline in which 4-year-old Gohan is left to fend for himself in the wilderness before repeatedly having his ass kicked by his father's former archenemy in an effort to toughen him up. By the time all the blood, death, cigarettes, alcohol, sexual harassment, and most egregious filler had been cut out to meet Saban's standard, the first
That is the Shonen Trump, though. I'm sorry, I gotta point this out. But as a DBZ fan, it's kind of cool that Goku as a kid, Piccolo or King Piccolo was gonna be his biggest villain, right? And ultimately becomes his biggest ally. Then we got Vegeta, who is probably everyone would recognize as Goku's biggest rival, right? Him and Vegeta, now look at them. They're like best friends. That is the true power of rivalry, and I think a lot of people in today's day and age don't appreciate having somebody to push against. because the only way to sharpen iron is with iron.
67 episodes of DBZ had been whittled down to 53 episodes. And to be fair, Dragon Ball Z does have a lot of filler. Decades later, Dragon Ball Kai would recut Z's original 291 episode run down to just 167 episodes, but that was done by Toei, the studio that actually produced it. In the fall of 1996, Saban's neutered version of Dragon Ball Z premiered in first-run syndication, meaning that it was aired on whatever network decided to pick it up. It was successful enough that it ran for 2 seasons, and Dragon Ball was once again in limbo.
I don't believe it.
Son of a
Is this
bitch.
the real dad?
Yep.
Fortunately, and somewhat poetically, it was Cartoon Network that picked up Dragon Ball Z.
Oh,
Starting in the fall of 1990.
God, that just brought, oh my lord. Just those 3 little guitar strums just brought back my childhood. Oh,
The fledgling afternoon
Fucking
program
right,
clock
baby.
Toonami began airing those initial 53 episodes. If you're an American Dragon Ball fan over the age of 30, odds are this is where you first encountered Goku and company. Okay, so here's the part where I could say, and the rest was history. But no, DBZ's success was still far from a sure thing because again, viewers were being introduced to the Dragon Ball universe by getting thrown into the deep end. Even for the select few who'd managed to catch those first 13 episodes of classic Dragon Ball in its pre-dawn time slot on a different channel, a lot happens between Goku wrecking Emperor Pilaf's castle and Raditz showing up.
Kakarot? That's right. That's your name.
His name?
I was a little late to the party with DBZ, and though I had a vague idea of who Goku was from those half-remembered episodes of Dragon Ball, I still had questions, like, what's up with that dude with 3 eyes, and why does he hang out with that little guy dressed like a French clown? Who the hell is Yajirobe, and why does he live with a talking cat? And most
Oh, he's a
importantly,
gangster.
why
What
does
are you talking
Piccolo
about?
hate Goku so much?
I could care less what happens to your son.
Even though they'd been watching DBZ on Toonami since day one, none of my friends actually knew, but they still tuned in every afternoon because the fights were sick.
yeah,
If starting
fair.
American audiences off with DBZ was a crazy idea, the merchandising was even wilder. At the same time Toonami was airing those first 53 episodes, it was announced that the Canadian toy company Irwin had secured the master license to release action figures based on this potential hit series.
Dragon Ball Z time capsule and action figures each sold separately.
Future Trunks is so cool. It's so sad that in Dragon Ball Z, and I shouldn't say sad, but it's frustrating that Gohan, Trunks, Goten, none of them get explored. And we have 2 versions of Trunks. We literally have blue hair Trunks and pink hair Trunks.
And much in the same way that Funimation repackaged a 10-year-old cartoon with some minor changes for American audiences, much of Irwin Toys' early products did the exact same thing to existing merchandise. For instance, they gave Vegeta a gun?
Yes, that's how it happened.
DBZ had already been airing in Japan, Spain, Hong Kong, France, and Mexico, and most of those territories had generated their own slew of tie-in products, which Irwin could reissue stateside, and which they did with complete and utter disregard
I had that
for what
toy.
episodes of the show had actually aired in the USA. So, compounding the
I
questions
had that
already
Goku
about
shooting a
Goku's
Kai Blast
past,
one.
A stroll through my local KB Toys left me with even more about his future. On top of completely spoiling the big reveal of Goku's Super Saiyan form, which wouldn't happen on Toonami until late 1999, Irwin's starting lineup of action figures included Frieza's final form, plus the next 2 big
Yeah, I
bads,
have
Cell and
to
Majin
play.
Buu.
I have
We
to
also
do
got
it. I
characters
have
who were
to.
years away from being introduced, like both versions of Trunks, Goten, and Gohan's teenage Super Saiyan form. It's not unheard of for toys to contain spoilers, like the Batman Mask of the Phantasm action figure that unmasked the titular Phantasm, or the Jango Fett with removable head action feature. But never before has a kids show's official toy line overwhelmingly featured characters who wouldn't actually appear on the show for years. Who the f are Janemba and Hildegard? Why does Goku have a giant yellow mullet and a halo? Does Vegeta actually get a gun
Wait,
at
what?
some point? Dragon Ball Z left me with a lot of questions, but thankfully, the show's American rise in popularity coincided with widespread access to this thing called the internet. There, I quickly discovered just how answers to many of my questions, though it is still very
Thank
unclear
you
why that Vegeta
to the original weebs out there who documented this shit and paved the way for the weeb commanders and the Otaku Anonymous and all the other and the Zonins for the world. For all my weebs out there, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Shout out to you guys.
figure came with a gun.
To each his own.
Back in the stone age of dial-up, watching videos online wasn't really a thing, let alone 500 plus episodes of an anime series. So I settled for reading episode descriptions on various fan sites and still religiously tuning into Toonami every day to see what would happen next, even if I knew it was coming. Looking back on it, making the target audience feel like they're out of the loop for
Yeah, but we knew
who wouldn't
characters
be
and it was
relevant
cool.
Until literally hundreds of episodes later. Janemba and Hildegard, for the record, first appear in 2 DBZ movies that wouldn't officially release in North America until 2006. I can't imagine that Funimation's business plan banked on the chance that the average viewer in their 9 to 12-year-old target demographic was willing to do supplemental research to make sense of this wacky show where dudes named after vegetables and musical instruments and underwear beat the shit out of each other every afternoon.
But this is, I think we're missing on something. I think this was the key to something like Shrek as well. Shrek was like, for my generation, for me as a kid, it wasn't for my parents, but my parents or my dad could sit down and watch it with me, and my mom too, for Shrek specifically. But Dragon Ball Z was me and my dad on the weekends, on Saturday mornings, watching it together. We could both sit down and we could both watch it, right? And as a kid, I watched it because animation cool, characters cool, fighting alien, what? Charge up, hair goes up. I'm a kid, that's all I need. But now looking back at it as an adult, saying discipline, training, there's so many like little lessons that you could pick up in it. Like, that's why all of this is so popular. It makes so much sense.
Maybe they did count on the fact
Napoleon
that the show
Dynamite was
awesome
another
enough
one.
that
It doesn't
viewers
matter what
wouldn't
age
sweat
you
the
are. That shit was
details,
funny as
would just
fuck.
figure it out along the way. And I guess they were right. It took 3 failed attempts for Akira Toriyama's martial arts masterpiece to catch on with American audiences, but much like Goku himself,
Man.
taking a few beatings just made Dragon Ball come back even more powerful. Its rise in popularity happened piecemeal around the world, but today
It's
an
an
undeniable
authentic
global
story. That's why
phenomenon.
people love
Whether
it.
It's the palpable enthusiasm of packed stadiums in Mexico.
And Goku isn't
cheering for
perfect,
Goku
right?
as he
But we
wails
still
on
root for
Jiren,
him.
and people came out of
What?
the woodwork to pay their respects following Toriyama's passing. From Jackie Chan to the Prime Minister of France to the guy who played Goku in that horrible live-action movie that we don't talk about to 30,000 fans in Argentina performing a
No one give that guy hate. That guy was a true Dragon Ball Z fan. But when you're given a shit sandwich, you can only do so much to package up a shit sandwich. You know what I'm saying?
Genki Dama in unison. Saying this cartoon has reached a lot of people is kind of an understatement. As nostalgic as I am for those early days of DBZ on Toonami, I'm so grateful that this series got popular enough that we don't have to watch Daima the same way. We won't have to wait a decade for it to catch on.
This is
Comb
true.
the internet to make sense of it.
I
We
cannot
probably
wait
won't
to
have
see
the
this show.
storyline spoiled by action figures, though that remains to be seen. We'll all get to experience
Episode
Akira
1 of
Toriyama's final
Dragon Ball Daima is fun. If you guys have a Crunchyroll, go to Crunchyroll and watch it. Get a 7-day subscription. Or if you want to wait, it's going to be on Netflix a week after.
together as a global community of fans, and really, that feels like a wish come true. So, what was your first exposure to Dragon Ball Z, GT, Super, or otherwise, and what burning questions did it leave you with? Why do you think Vegeta...
All right, IGN, I appreciate this video because I lost a lot of faith in you, a lot of trust in you for giving Sparking Zero a 7 out of 10. You gave Concord a 7 out of 10. I do not trust your gaming reviews, but that little bit of Dragon Ball history, that was good. I appreciated that. Let me know what you guys think down below.